Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi and welcome back to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. We have a special guest on today's show.
Hi.
For the very first time, we have cajoled Lydia into joining us. Lydia is my sister, Bello's other daughter, and she's here today in the treehouse. We're all kind of here. And we were sort of searching for different topics to do, and Lydia came up with one, and I invited her to join us on the podcast today, and she benevolently agreed. So Lydia,
you're our first guest.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yes.
35 episodes in, our 36th episode.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're inviting you, yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Good to have you here.
We've wanted to have somebody on the podcast for a really long time, and no one's agreed so far, so I'm glad that you're here.
We haven't asked anyone so far, have we?
Yeah.
I haven't.
We need to ask more people.
Okay.
Feeling loved and chosen to be here
Yeah,
then.
beautiful.
I mean, sorry. You are loved and chosen. So Lydia, how about you introduce the topic for today, because you came up with it, so it seems only fair.
Okay, so the topic that I wanted to be spoken about by these two was around like letting go or surrendering, but maybe the more realistic version of what that looks like, because I think sometimes when we talk about following your heart or being aligned with your heart or flowing with the river, it sounds to me very peaceful and kind of like a monk in a mountain. But what I was saying to these guys before is, you know, monks get diarrhea as well. I just think that sometimes it's messy, sometimes surrendering hurts and it's ugly. And I guess kind of, well, what do you do in that space? Because some, like, is it wrong or is it right, or what's going on? Sometimes you can be in really messed up spaces and you can't force your way out of it. So just wanted to talk about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a good topic. I think it's a good one because I think it speaks to the human suffering piece, which I think everybody experiences, but it also speaks to this idea that even though you are following your heart, that doesn't help you escape from hardship.
Sure.
So obviously, I'm going to ask you to kick this one off, Bello.
Well, I think, when I listen to this, it's completely fair. The process of surrendering isn't, you know, some ideal. It's not an ideation. It's not just a beautiful spiritual idea. The idea of jumping in the river, you know, I've said on more than one occasion that I have other people in my life that go, you know, jumping in the river and going with the flow is completely irresponsible way to go. You've got to have a plan. You know, you can't jump in rivers. Rivers are dangerous things. People drown in rivers, you know, so you bring it back to reality, or you bring it back to where a lot of us live, and a lot of these ideas sound almost like Hallmark cardish.
Yeah, right.
You know, and you just go, the card's nice, but, you know, I would have preferred a present, or could we, you know, like,
yeah.
You know, what's the real deal going here? Yeah, so I think that where Lyd is suggesting that it can't just be this kind of plastic surrender, you know, this kind of like this nicety that the idea of surrender or genuine spiritual surrender has teeth, and it happens in a real context. So I completely agree with that. One of the things I'd probably touch on at the front end, for me, in my own experience of surrender, has been that, you know, there's no place for right and wrong in the conversation around surrender. So for me, it's not the place where we're talking about good, bad, right, wrong. it's not a moral conversation. I don't think surrender is a moral conversation. So I don't think it's about things like sanctification, or I don't think it's about becoming a good person, or I don't think it's about becoming holy or pure or righteous. Or I think whenever you invoke any of those kind of ideas, even surrender to the will of the Lord, or any of those kind of, sanctify yourself, or any of that sort of stuff, for me, that all becomes completely convoluted with a whole lot of other stuff that has very little to do with the heart process, and more to do with like some kind of social construct, some kind of religious construct, or some kind of construct about right and wrong, good and bad, black and white. So for me, surrender is, surrender is not in that place at all. So I don't think about becoming a better person through the process of surrender, or becoming a more awake person, or becoming a nicer person. I don't think that any of that necessarily helps, because I think it mixes the whole spiritual. I think it mixes the inner process of surrendering and letting go with a whole kind of other agenda around becoming a particular kind of a person.
Yeah.
For me, so that would be really important for me. And the second thing I probably would start to say is that the whole idea of surrender is coming from an original French word, which means to render over, or to render up to something that has a prior claim. So it was almost used originally in a legal sense, where it was noted legally that someone had a prior claim to this, and so therefore you had to, whatever you had to let that go and hand that back, right? So it's a rendering over is where the whole idea of surrender is. So you go, well, how does that fit into the whole inner space, or how does that fit into the heart space? For me, the big observation would be that my heart has a prior claim on every part of me. My essence has a prior claim over my head, over my emotions, over my ambitions. Because heart represents essence in my framing of it, to be led by the heart is to be connected to who I really am, the core of who I am, or the true self. We have 1,000 names for it. Call it essence. And that actually has a claim on how I'm meant to roll. And so I find that when I've got attached in my head to something that I want, or I've got attached in my head to some idea it's normally some idea of how it should be. And sometimes it's related to my health, related to, say, pain that I feel in my back through back injuries or whatever it is. And I might be laying there and just thinking, this is, as you say, this is a shit show. Why am I subject to this, or why has this come upon me again, or whatever it is, right? And sometimes sometimes for me, even more acutely than maybe physical pain, it's been a sense of if I put in this amount of effort, if I play my role and do my role, and I play according to the rules, then surely then there'll be a reciprocal coming back to me, right?
Yeah.
And I find that when I have to surrender that most, it's normally when that idea has been so constructed in my head about what I'm actually entitled to, and what's fair, and what's right, and what's just. And then my heart just goes, no, I'm not interested in that at all. I'm not playing that game at all. And so then I would say that my heart has a prior claim, and I have to render over that conviction, or that desire, or that belief to the prior claim of my heart.
But what if you feel like you were in a season that was really aligned with your heart, and what you were doing and what you wanted in that space really was from your heart, and it's still not working out? You've tried and you've pushed, and you're just like, okay, now I'm going to have to surrender. And then you're in this space where you're lost, or in a liminal space, and you're just like, okay, well, what now? Like, I thought that was it, and now I'm freaking suffering.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So would we be suffering in that context because of our perception of what the outcome should be.
Probably.
Because I rarely feel like my heart has too much. I rarely feel like my heart is too specific about outcomes.
Yeah.
It's specific about posture. It's specific about who it's calling me to be or how it's calling me to roll. It's not really specific about, and this will result in this. You know what I mean? So it's more about taking a particular posture, holding a particular frame, which is connected to who I am, less about what that is going to offer up as a result of that. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but I think that's hard when you have to like exist in a world when it's just like, okay, I can follow my heart, but that actually might not have the best, most favorable outcomes for me.
Well, depending on how much you value living from your heart.
Yeah, like I think I've spoken to this in a previous episode or in a couple of previous episodes. For me, I look at that like the discomfort that comes with betraying your heart when you know where you should be going and what you should be doing, or when you know like what it feels like to be in alignment. I think the discomfort that comes with living out of alignment is worse. It feels worse. And that's obviously not to say that like you don't have to work, you don't have to like try, you don't have to, grow and participate and all of those things. Of course you do. But like I don't know, like for me when I have an indication of where my heart is taking me, I can't do the opposite to that. And yes, there's a natural question which comes on the top of this, which is like, well, what about practicalities and what about earning a living and, putting food on the table and all of that sort of thing? Like, I'm pursuing way of the heart. That doesn't mean that I don't have to like go and take a casual job marking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I'm going to do that because it's going to help me fund doing this thing that I know is really congruent with who I am and where I'm going. So I think it's like the more that you, I guess, surrender to your heart, not just the flow, but the more you surrender to your heart, the more your idea of that outcome starts to shift, or the expected outcome starts to shift.
I mean, it begs the question: do we think that there is surrender the reward in itself?
Maybe. I think, yes, you can surrender. I don't know. I just think sometimes it sucks. And sometimes you are left in a space where you're lost and you're just like, where to from here? I followed my heart. I went down this path. It actually didn't work out for me. So I'm surrendering to that not working anymore. But now what am I following or listening to? I'm just in this space that's shitty.
Yeah, for sure. So is that I wonder if that's universally the case, or I wonder if it is shitty, or is it? I know it can feel shitty, not to push back, but just to interrogate that feeling of, okay, so what's the shitty piece?
I think probably thinking that you knew that it was right for you and wanting it to work out and then it didn't. And so maybe it wasn't right for you. So then I think you question yourself and your own ability to listen to your heart, I guess.
I think that's a good point. Like, I feel like there have definitely been times in my life where I've pursued something that I thought was in alignment, but then it didn't work out and it turns out that it wasn't. But then does that kind of beg the question of like it all being kind of part of the journey? Like I look back and every time I've sort of done the best with the knowledge that I had, I wouldn't change any of the lessons that I've learned. I wouldn't change any of the, the things that I've been through because they've all accumulated to where like it's all kind of part of it. Do you know what I mean? Like I've really gained a lot of understanding of what it is to be human. And I think that that knowledge helps to connect me with people around me and to myself.
No, I agree with that. I do think that is a good point. In hindsight, though.
Yeah, of course. Because when you're going through it, you're like, I hate this. This just sucks.
I probably would just push back and say, I don't know that there's ever a time when you align with your heart, when that's regrettable. You know, it might misalign you in terms of the external world that you're in. It might mean that there's seasons of adjustment, or it might mean, in my world, it might mean that a door has unequivocally closed. That maybe emotionally or mentally I didn't want that door to close, and its closing is hard. And there might have been, as you said, a season of liminality where I've had to go, oh, geez, I thought I was there. I don't know where I'm meant to be now. But then when I've been able to return inwardly to a heart space and feel my way into a heart space, it's almost always that comes with a sense of it's okay. This is all right. You know, that that this is, it could be, this is all part of the process. It could be, you don't have the picture yet, or I frequently don't feel like my heart leaves me completely stranded.
Yeah.
I think my head leaves me stranded all the time.
Yeah.
And I think my emotions get me discombobulated. But I think when I know that I'm being the version of myself that I'm being, and this is where I like what you were saying, because the idea that life is shitty and hard is like, absolutely. And following your heart is no panacea or no kind of it doesn't anesthetize you to the fact that you have to walk through shitty situations, right? It's just whether you're walking through those situations with a sense that I'm aligned and I'm being true to who I am, or whether I've abandoned myself.
Yeah.
I find that the sense of abandonment, well, like when I'm in my head and then when I'm in my head and I'm trying to have to scrape and scratch and make it work and trying to, what we would call hustle culture, enter into the big hustle to make stuff work. I find that exhausting. I find that discombobulating, and I find that there's almost no promise of stability in that. But if I return to who I am, I feel like a lot of, I mean, I don't know what your guys' experience are of that. Do you feel like that when you know in your heart of hearts that I'm being true to who you are and you're taking actions consistent with who you are? You can't guarantee a result, right? But the result that you can guarantee is an inward result rather than an external result.
Yes. Although sometimes I think when you're going through the surrender, yes, I do think that. But when you're in a surrender phase where you need to surrender, I think sometimes it feels like the equivalent of you should eat broccoli because it's good for you. But I don't want to do that. But I know that it's good for me to surrender into this situation. But I don't want to.
But so what's the part of you that doesn't want to would be the question.
My attachment to the outcome that I wanted it to look a certain way.
Great. So, yeah, good answer. Right. I mean, it would be the same for me too. So when I have an attachment to a particular outcome and I have this sense, this heart sense that I need to surrender that, that's a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
But I think the moment that you're talking to is a really important moment to call out, because I think that I feel like everybody will be able to identify with like that pivotal, that key moment where they know, but they don't want to make a decision off the back of it. Like I've hit that moment several times where I'm like, I have this deep inner conviction of the direction or the action that I'm supposed to take or what I'm supposed to do. And because of that attachment, my mind or my emotions almost immediately just throw a massive narrative on top of like why that has to be wrong or why that heart is not right. And because my heart is like, it's not going to argue. Like, it's just like, well, you know. And so I think that thing that you're speaking to, that moment of surrender, where you're almost like looking over the cliff going, I don't want to step off into all of this uncertainty. I don't want to step off into this thing because I'm going to fall. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I, like, you know, all of the other things kind of pile on top. So I think it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. And I have nothing else to say.
No, but I think potentially another way that we could carve this up or think about this is in a conversation around frequency. That the attachment frequency and the emotions and the potential sense of entitlement or the sense of justice or whatever it is, you know, whatever we construct in our mind is a particular frequency that you tune into, like the old radios. I like the old idea of the old radios. Tune in, pick up channel. This is the way it should work out. This is the way I want it to work out. And like, cannot tune, you know, and if you tune into that channel, suddenly the message comes through loud and here, yeah, you have a right to this. This is not fair. You know, the injustice comes up, the pissed offness comes up, the sort of like, I don't want to eat this meal, you know. I don't want the broccoli. I just want the ice cream and Milo. You know, it's like, no, not until you finish your broccoli. I don't want to eat the broccoli. You know, it's like, so it's that, yeah, it's that vibe, right? Yeah. And then if you adjust the dial, you know, a little bit and you tune into your heart, it's like the heart's playing different. It's playing a different tune. In my world, it's always playing a different tune. Sometimes in my life, it's when things have gone completely pear-shaped, and externally things have fallen apart that I think shouldn't have fallen apart. And you guys can remember, you can go back through your dad's history and go, yeah, there, and there. And then I've gone back to things that my heart is deeply and passionately connected to, i.e. our family. And I've gone, nothing's shifted there. Nothing's actually shifted there, you know? And there's even been times when the family might be discombobulated and I might have been in my head or I might have been in my attachments to a past paradigm of how things should have been, or I might have even been generationally disconnected. Like you kids might have been taking leaps 5 or 6 steps further down the track in terms of, you know, you'd stop being adolescents and you'd become young adults and you'd form different opinions and you'd expose yourself to different environments and you kind of, you know, your growth had sort of, it was tapering along like this, you know, and then it started getting teenagers and then kind of young adults and educated and it's like, you know, and then all of a sudden I've got these fully formed, informed, well-traveled, well-thought through, educated individuals that are functioning up here. And I'm still chugging along here with, you know, my old perceptions of the way the world should be. And I'm having an argument with you guys about, oh, you guys just need to believe this. And you're sort of going, oh,
dude,
Dad, I love you, but you're so wrong on this point. You know, like we can't get back to where you are, Dad. And then I'm feeling like the family's like fully discombobulated and it's not there. And then if I go into my heart just says, no, you're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. And that was when that, you know, the Rob Bell comment, you know, if you're open enough, if your heart is open enough, your children will become your teachers. And I go, oh, get stuffed, Rob Bell. You know, you know, but it's completely true.
Yeah.
And so I align with my heart, and then say the sorries and do the reconciliation pieces, you know, for things that I've got wrong as a parent, and then try and reconnect and learn and grow, right? And for me, that's an ongoing process of not intergenerational relationships, right? But also realizing you guys are inhabiting a world that I don't have the mental horsepower to understand everything that comes naturally to you guys. I don't have the mental horsepower to grasp that because I'm just not there, you know. I'm of a different age to some extent. some neural pathways are kind of locked and loaded.
I think maybe this leads to then, like, if we look at it this way, then surrender is something that you have to practice. Like, it's a practiced, iterative skill or process, right? How would you view surrender? Like, you brought up the topic. What do you envision when you hear surrender?
I envision surrender as letting go and moving on in some sense, or stepping out of a space. I think what you said around the cliff is resonates, because I think sometimes you hold on to the idea of the thing that you want that's behind you, and then you're on the edge of the cliff and okay, I'm gonna have to let go of that because it's not working. But then you're like, I'm gonna have to step off into this cliff into a whole world of pain. And I think that is where the practice part comes in. But how do you actually do that? How do you actually take that step into surrendering, I guess?
Well, I think that's the point, that's why I would talk about surrendering to your heart. So there's no point at which I, as the father of the family, for example, just to borrow my metaphor or my example, there's no point at which I, as the father of the family, want to admit to my children that they know more than me or that they're more evolved than me. That is jumping off a cliff into a shit sandwich. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm wrong. Like, not too many. That's not the most comfortable thing to do. But in my heart, if I know in my heart that, dude, get out of your ego, get out of your perception that you're right, get out of this perception that you're the fountain of wisdom, open your heart up to the people that you love the most. Allow the people in your life who love you and want to do a relationship with you, soften yourself and come back into your heart. And for me, it's not a surrender unto a tragedy. It's a surrender unto a heart orientation. I'm surrendering back to a disposition in my heart.
Okay.
I think. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that example I think makes sense to me. But what happens if it's like you've been married for 20 years and you were following your heart, and that relationship was really good for a good solid period of time, but now it's not working anymore. You've done everything you can, and you surrendering looks like you leaving that marriage. And then that looks like, you don't know what that looks like, but that's your whole life, all the kids you have, the family home you have, everything falling apart, and you don't know what that future looks like. And do you know what I mean?
I think, like, to marry both of the cliff metaphor and the family metaphor and the example that you've just brought up together, I think the surrender, yes, looks like to some extent jumping off that cliff, but I think the bit before that, when you're looking at that and it's scary and you don't know all those things, I think it's looking at the situation that you're in and realizing that you are on the cliff. And, like, you're on the cliff for a reason, and reality is the whole thing is coming down regardless of whether you decide to surrender or not. If you, say that marriage did work for you for 20 years, it worked until it stopped working. Like, it was in alignment until something fundamental about the form changed. Things change. Like, things, once it's, if something is in alignment once, it doesn't mean it's in alignment forever. So if you're getting to that point and you're like, oh, it's done now, and I don't know what that means, you're on that, if you have that awareness, you're on shaky ground anyway. And to dig your heels in, you're still falling. You're just falling, digging your heels in as you're going. So it's kind of like, the outcome is kind of the same. True. The only change is the way that you decide to show up for that.
That's true.
Well, yeah, I agree. And awareness of the predisposition to judge certain outcomes as good or bad. Staying in the marriage is good, dissolving the marriage is bad. This is why I said at the front end, categories of right, wrong, good, bad are unhelpful, because people used to do this in the church all the time. Women would have relationships with their husbands where they would it was genuinely horrible, like really, really bad for both. And you'd say, why are you, like, maybe it's over? And they'd say, well, God hates divorce. And you go, that's a mental position. That's a theological, philosophical position. It's actually not the position of your heart. You've left this relationship in your heart years ago. And he's probably left the relationship in his heart years ago. So why are you're insisting upon having a relationship without actually having the relationship? You know, so it's the attachment to an idea rather than the alignment to what is inwardly true. I mean, if your heart's left the relationship, it's left the relationship.
So how do you let go of the attachment then?
Well, I think one of the ways you let
Such
go.
a good question.
Well, I think one of the ways you let go of the attachment is you don't assign a right and wrong to it. Like it's not better to stay in the relationship than it is to say maybe it's better to leave the relationship. So like if we could take perceived categories of like the perception with an attachment is this attachment, I want this attachment. This is a good attachment. This is giving me something that I want, right? So we've kind of attached an ethic to it. We've kind of attached an ethic of I need this. This is important.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, every time I've had to surrender something, that's the very stuff that gets called into question. Is this really it?
I think another way to, which we've touched on previously, it's related to this one, is measuring the risk in the opposite direction. So like, yes, not assigning good or bad to, you know, leaving the relationship or staying, but also going, you know, instead of saying, what do I risk if I leave this relationship? Asking, what do I risk if I don't leave this relationship?
Yeah. That makes sense. 'Cause I guess you can look at it as if I stay in it, I want this. It's something that I want. Maybe I know it's bad, but I want that. Then if I thought about staying in it, it would be like I would risk losing myself.
Great example. I think that that's the right language too. If I had stayed in the church, like when I left the church, I felt like I had no shared value outside of that community. I mean, I had a Bachelor of Theology and a teaching qualification, and I'd spent 23 years in you know, drenched in theology and Christian stuff, and it's like, who's going to want that, you know? And if I look at it now, post 25 years out of the church or however long it's been, if I projected 25 years of staying in that same situation and being that same sort of person because I was so attached to the title of being, you know, the educator, the teacher, the lecturer, the pastor, the whatever it was, I'd look at my life now and be devastated.
Yeah.
You know, like, but I could not see that at the top of the cliff. I could not see that at the bottom of the cliff was something far more aligned, far more attuned. You can't see that through liminality. The nature of liminality is you know, I know I can't stay here, but I haven't arrived somewhere else. And so now I'm in this stateless, you know, uncertain place. I don't know how to identify myself. I don't know how to navigate. I don't know what the next thing is. I don't necessarily feel secure. But I would argue that that liminal space is safer than staying in an attached space to something that has to something that you won't surrender, that will eventually become malignant. It'll become if I had stayed in that, it would have become a malignancy in my family, in my life, in my marriage.
True.
I don't know. What are we really saying? You know, we're saying that, you know,
I think that's
monks on hill get diarrhea.
Oh yeah, we veered away from that.
So don't become a monk on a hill.
I think maybe
No, if you are a monk on a hill, just bring toilet paper. You know?
maybe just that it's while there's the motivation to have that lifestyle of following your life, it doesn't always mean that it's pretty or that it's easy or that stepping off that cliff is going to be fun or shitting in the woods or whatever. It's going to be elegant or
No.
your idea of peace and harmony.
Yeah, I think that like, and this is something that I think that we seek to be transparent about, is that following your heart does not make you immune to suffering and to hardship and to all of the things that make life what life is in all of its, richness and fullness. That also includes pain and, isolation and all the rest of it as well. I think it's just following your heart allows you to go through that fullness of life with a deep grounding in who you are. And I think that grounding provides a sense of stability, even when it is chaotic, even when you are going through the river rapids, even when you are the monk with diarrhea, the diarrhea monk. Do you know what I mean? And it means that you're not kind of blowing in the wind of trying to find that stability elsewhere. And so you're not shifting attachments.
It's a really interesting conversation because Jack Cornfield has this analogy of this young guy that travelled to Thailand to be part of a Buddhist monastery, and he really wanted to be, a devout sort of Buddhist sage, and he was there, and in his first 12 months, it just all goes pear-shaped, and he can't meditate, and the work duties are too much, and the getting up early is too much, and he's tired and he's grumpy, and the food's just not so, and the monastery's beside a busy street, and the traffic's there, and the kids are playing outside the wall, and the head of the monastery goes to this young monk to be, and says, what's the problem? And he goes, oh, it's all these things, and then there's the kids outside. I can't meditate because the kids outside. They're constantly going outside. The kids outside bothering me and they interrupt my meditation. And, and the abbot basically says, here's a question for you. Are the kids outside coming in here to bother you, or are you going out there to bother them? Now, clearly he's not going outside the door of the monastery to bother the kids. But it's the fact that he had this expectation that the monastic life was going to be serenity and sitting there with, lotus leaves and dripping water and, and that he was going to find his inner,
by virtue of the location that he was.
Yeah. And he's sitting in a room and it's hot and smelly and the food's horrible and he's losing weight and he feels hungry and the kids are annoying. And the abbot basically goes, I think we're actually dealing not so much, I think what you're really dealing with is this isn't meeting your expectation of what it is, and you will suffer to the degree that you hold on to that expectation.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's the question that it might round this off well for us. What is something in each of our lives, and it can be big or small, that we've had to surrender? Now that given that we're talking about surrender, we should qualify that we have actually surrendered some stuff. Like what has been something in your life where you've gone, I need to let that go. I need to render that up.
Who's gonna go first? You're both looking at me.
Well, it doesn't have to be big either,
No, but I want to be genuine. I mean, it wouldn't be me if it wasn't like, let me tell you something really deep.
Yeah.
I think a recurring theme is surrendering the idea of a linear career, or like success in a linear career format.
Right.
Because I mean, I should have realized that I would have to surrender that the minute that I did an arts degree, but didn't click until years later.
Yeah.
So I think like that ideas of career and stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously coming out was a moment of surrender too, because it was like I was like on the cliff and I was like, I'm going to come out. I could potentially be surrendering connection that I have with family and friends, but I just need to let go. So those two things.
Yeah.
Nice. And when you did, hard alignment in both those things?
Yeah, absolutely. But also terrifying and gut-wrenching. And still, like, the career thing, I think, is still discombobulating because I have moments where I'm like, what? Really? And my heart's like, yes. Are you yes. Shh. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, great, awesome, cool, thanks.
Nice.
More liminality for me.
I love it.
Yeah. Lydia?
Mine?
Nice.
Well, you guys both know, but probably surrendering the idea of what my 20s was going to look like. So I think when I was younger, I thought 20s was about exploring and having fun and, you know, being very free. And then instead, I'm 24 having to battle cancer and grapple with my mortality and am I going to die or what is life? And then following all my treatments and chemo and stuff, having to, you know, have a very weak body that wasn't doing what all the other 20-year-olds were doing. 20-something-year-olds, yeah. And I think I was really angry about that for a long time because I think you feel like it's wasted years. And I, you know, have to surrender that because I'm not getting those years back. I just have to live now and do what I want to do now and not have an idea that it had to be done in your 20s. And yeah, it happened. I can't do anything about that. Still feel like it's unfair.
Of course.
But I think it's surrendering, I guess, in that space for me is not letting it impact what my future looks like. I think sometimes if you don't surrender things that have already happened, it impacts how you live out your future. So I think that's what surrendering looked like for me.
Well, it impacts your present.
Yeah.
Because your future exists in the present and your past, therefore, exists in your present.
Yes. Well, then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good observation. That's a big surrendering. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks for letting me be your first guest.
No. He needs to share.
Oh,
He's
true. Sorry. What's yours? One that we haven't heard.
Hair. I mean, I just thought that I would have long flowing hair, and I do. But it's all on my back and my chin. I think one of the things that I was brought up with going to the school that I went to and even entering into the church early on was the myth of significance, the myth of influence, or the myth of impact. You know, that if we do this, then we'll make a great impact, or we'll leave, you know, we'll make a great contribution and we'll bring a lot of change and you know, be a force for good in the world, and these kind of very naive young ideas about pursuing a noble path and or it looking a particular way. And for me, surrendering that and just going, no, I'm just Bello, live on a hill with my wife, and that's probably as good as it's going to get. And that is actually completely fine. So surrendering any kind of egoic sense of becoming a somebody that does something significant, being happy to not leave a legacy, just being happy to live my life and go, be like the cats, you know. Zeke won't leave a legacy. We will remember him fondly, you know what I mean? But no one will be going, oh, he made a significant contribution. It's like, no, he was a cool cat and he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
You know, just like our first cat that we had as a family, you know, Ezra. That's a cool cat. Yeah, did he leave a legacy? No, it was a good cat. It's like, yeah, Dad was a good dad. He's a good guy. And I think I think for me, surrendering that and dropping into something much more gentle is proving to be really healing for me from those early expectations that I was meant to do something. But getting rid of that it's been hard but good.
You also wouldn't even know if you left a legacy because you'd be dead.
You'd be dead.
Yeah. That's like that painter who was super famous after he died.
Picasso.
So many of them.
That's what I mean. It's like legacies are stupid.
Or was it Van Gogh? Can't remember.
You could leave a
It was Van
legacy and
Gogh,
you
I
wouldn't
think.
even know. So
Well, you know, Eva Cassidy.
Oh, yeah.
regarded as one of the most beautiful voices and was locally famous but not internationally famous.
And now that we've shared our deep things that we're letting go of, you guys have to as well. If you're listening, comment, let us know.
Yeah.
Pop it in the comments, subscribe.
Thanks for
Hashtag
selling
wave
it
the
for
heart.
us. Thank you so much for being our first guest.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
Thanks,
You're
Chops.
welcome. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you guys.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.